daily dose of honest science.
So hi guys, welcome back to my podcast Daily Dose of Honest Science. I'm your host Dr. Chani Kumar, and today we're going to cover the topic of postdoctoral researchers. So what you're going to expect is how we cover the topic is what is actually a postdoc and what are the tasks of a postdoc in the academic setting, and we will also talk about the current situation of a postdoc in academia and why I think it's really important to talk also with the wider public about it. So today I have my lovely colleague, Dr. Corinna Haupt here. And Corinna, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited. It's my first podcast, so yes, that's going to be good. Yes, my name is Corinna. I'm considering myself to be a senior postdoc. We will come to the definition in a little bit. I am a biologist, so I studied biology, and after I did my PhD, where I was already focusing on neuroscience, I continued to work in neuroscience. And as a private person, I'm married and I'm the mother of a now already 22-year-old son, which makes me very proud. And I'm really looking forward to our nice little conversation here now.
Me too. So I'm really honored that you were here and having your time. After introducing yourself, I have a question for you. What is a postdoc?
Well, there's definitions, right?
I have one definition. So in many fields, a postdoc is de facto the next step in an academic career path. And after you earned your doctoral degree, you have a temporary position that allows you to train as a researcher and gain more experiences and skills. And this should prepare you for the academic career. And most postdocs position we will find in academia and industry, but there's also some in the non-profit and the government position. And the vast majority is in the so-called STEM field, so mathematics, life sciences. These positions also become more common in social sciences and humanities. So would you agree on that?
Well, I do agree to some extent. So a postdoc is a temporary state, and it's something that you do right after you've finished your PhD if you decide to stay in science for at least quite some while and do some more research. So that's what one considers to be a postdoc. But I think there's more about this in reality, right? That's, I think, what you are pointing at.
Definitely, yes. So right now I'm really fairly new into this game, I would say. I'm a junior postdoc, you could say. And there's this unofficial statement of senior postdoc. So would you maybe grasp a bit the audience about being a senior postdoc?
Yeah, I don't know whether senior postdoc is an official name. I don't think so. I more or less heard this somewhere, or I even made it up. I don't know, but I'm happy to explain what I mean. So normally it's thought that a postdoc position lasts for like 3 or 5 years. It differs a little bit from country to country. I think in the United States there's not really a limit at all. But in many countries, there is a limit how long you call someone really officially a postdoc. I did my first postdoc position exactly in that kind of definition. So I was doing research at the Helmholtz Center, and I had first a contract for 3 years and then an additional 1 year. So 4 years of postdoc. That's something just regular and normal. And then I decided I want to move on and do another postdoc. But since the research that I did at Helmholtz was really just focused on research, and we will come a little bit, I think, later to what a postdoc really does. I was interested in also teaching students. So I was looking more into positions that are associated with university. And I found a postdoc position at the LMU medical department, and I'm still there, which is now my 13th year. So I consider myself being a senior postdoc since I'm not a professor, but I'm still in university. So that's, and my heart still feels like being a postdoc. So maybe that helps a little bit to understand why
Definitely.
chose this. Yes.
So, since you already said that you have to do so many tasks now, since you're like 13 years now into it, can you describe how your daily life maybe looks like, and what is your actual research area, so on what you're working, and if you're even working as you would like to?
Maybe I have to go one little step back, because we have said so far, just so that people understand, that the postdoc positions are temporary.
Yes.
I'm now in a situation, and that adds to my definition as a senior postdoc, that I'm one of the few lucky ones who has an unlimited contract with university, which in turn changed my life as a postdoc in that way that I'm not doing only the things that a postdoc normally does. So maybe I first come to what postdocs normally do, because they still work very many hours in the lab. They do still research themselves. They are at the bench if they work wet. They do use machines and pipettes and maybe have a cell culture and things like that. So you really do research every day, more or less. Of course, there is some evaluation of your results and so on, where you also spend time at the desk or time reading what other people published. When I accepted to stay in this position at the university, I was taking over also a lot of administration. And that very often happens, that's what I see with other people as well, that are lucky to get a permanent position, then very often you have to take over a lot of administration. So in my case, I'm coordinating teaching for medical students. I'm enjoying this very much. I have many really motivated colleagues around me that enjoy teaching. So it's a wonderful team to work with. And we do have a lot of teaching. The medical department is very large, so it's per semester almost 900 medical students that want to be doctors.
It's a really important task, right? So
it is.
You have to prepare them for the world.
Exactly. And I take this very seriously. And I enjoy it very much. As I said, most of the ones in the team as well. So that makes it so interesting to work with all them. And that also brings me to the situation that I can interact with many other departments. And I'm constantly learning due to the teaching and due to the interaction. And the drawback of this situation, having an unlimited contract and doing all this administrative work and also doing this big amount of teaching, is that I don't have that much time for research anymore. I do still enjoy being in the lab and I still have time, but very often not as much as I would like to myself.
So when you start going into the administrative way, I would say, or route, then it's more like you leave the bench more and more.
Yes, more or less. It's quite hard, and I have to fight for time to really be at the bench. I'm enjoying to supervise students. At the moment, I have a medical student who would like to earn her medical doctoral degree, and it's very nice to supervise her and to be in the lab with her. And once in a while, I'm really doing something on my own project where I'm the one at the bench, and it's really my project. But it's yes, you kind of have to make that decision. Otherwise, the situation is quite tough for just someone doing research getting a permanent position. So that's my experience and what I have seen for many other situations, that if you want to stay in academia as a postdoc, so not being a professor, you very often have to take over some of that, to compensate maybe, and someone has to do the job as well, right? So
Yeah, definitely. And from a scale from 1 to 10, 1 means I don't miss it, and 10, I really, really miss it. How much research you would actually like to do more? So from a scale to 1 to 10.
Well, I would love to have it like really half and half, but that often doesn't work out. So
So administrative stuff is taking over all the time.
Yeah, like everywhere in the world, bureaucracy is a very complicated path, and
Especially in Germany.
And that's the same in academia. So there's many things that have to be taken care of, and that's concerning the teaching, but also in the research. So I guess those who don't work in research is not only work at the bench, it's also a lot of administration that comes with your research. So like applying for grants, applying for being able to do experiments. Certain experiments need permission by the government and so on. So it's
Specific machines that you have to apply for.
exactly, yes, you name it.
Corinna, you did not pinpoint what is your research area. So
Thanks.
that would be good to know.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Thanks for reminding me about that. Well, as I said when I was introducing myself, I'm a neuroscientist. So I'm
It's a big field.
It is. So I'm interested in the central nervous system. And I'm focusing on how the central nervous system, so the brain or the spinal cord, reacts to injury. And injury models I have worked with so far are models for stroke. I guess that's something everyone has an association with and maybe even knows patients that suffer from a stroke. But also injuries like a traumatic brain injury, like what can happen to someone who has an accident, like with your car or with your bicycle. So sometimes you just very heavy bump your head, but sometimes it's even an open wound. And it's very interesting to see how the nervous system, which does not have such a regeneration capacity as other organs, how that reacts, and we can learn a lot. And in the, I would say, future, one of course hopes for finding ways to support even that tissue in some kind of regeneration and repair. Mm-hmm. I guess that's, in a nutshell.
Awesome. So, but we cannot expect from you that you can treat someone.
No.
Would you like to?
Oh, I would love to.
Maybe your research might help actually in the end.
It would make me so happy if I can provide maybe such a tiny little piece of one treatment, or to just contribute to some understanding. And that's something you have to be aware of as well, that most of us researchers will not make this big finding. That's something I had to learn myself. You have to appreciate that the small findings that you make, the discoveries, even if they are so very little, they all contribute. And that's what kind of drives me as well, right?
Yeah, so it's not like disillusioning myself, but you are completely right. So the small things make the difference. But sometimes it's kind of difficult to grasp the difference. So it's like, I found this out, but I have no idea if this has any implications. And later on you find out, oh wow, because I contributed like this little thing, it led to, I don't know, within the next few years to a new therapy or whatever.
This would be really awesome. Yes.
Yeah, because I really like the overall subject, because it's something that people, face nearly day to day. So they have someone around who had maybe a stroke or a car accident or something like that, and these serious brain injuries, and if we know how to treat them, and because it's like really a big deal if someone has damage forever and loses somehow his memory or whatever, and you could contribute that maybe the tissue regenerates, that would be really awesome, like.
Absolutely. I think that's the dream of many of the neuroscientists, that they would like to contribute to that.
Yeah. I don't know, did you hear about the scandal, the Stanford scandal? No.
No, I didn't.
It was one professor who is actually known in the Alzheimer.
Ah, okay.
So he was the director of the Stanford University. And he faked up some of his data. And some of it was, the Alzheimer ground paved the way, and it's
there's something in the
okay. I don't want to touch that because I did it in the previous episode, but it's always like a balancing act.
But you're touching a very important point, and maybe we can focus a little also on what is the situation for many postdocs, right? So I talked a little bit about my way, and I said, well, I'm quite okay and I'm quite happy, right? But what I have experienced a little bit myself, but that I have seen in these many years that I have been working in science, is that very often postdocs get into a situation where they are really very stressed. I mean, you were talking about the professor in Stanford, but it's the same situation for postdocs, that sometimes postdocs get into situations where they are forced to deliver results that might not really turn out the way that they were expected to turn out, right? And I do think that sometimes people, I say it now in general, people in research sometimes get into situations where they like to change the results a little bit more into the direction that was expected to be. I don't want to get any more clear because I don't want to I don't want that people that listen to us get the impression that people in science are cheating, because that's not what...
No, 99% are doing the job really well. It's just the 1% that somehow sit on their ego and don't want to admit that they had a, I would say, shit hypothesis, and that's it. It doesn't turn out as you wish, because biology is very complicated, right? You have to consider many aspects of different, like structural biology, etc., and you cannot assume that your hypothesis works for this direction.
Yeah, and you have to kind of like account for many failures, right? You have to be prepared that not everything that you do in the lab, even though you had a good concept and you had perfect preparation and all the right machines and so on, but biology is biology, and things don't always work out the way you expected or hypothesized. And but sometimes the pressure that we get from either our supervisors, and I'm really talking now in general, please don't associate that with my person, just in general what I have seen in these many years, that this pressure sometimes leads to situation where you, and now I would like to focus a little bit more on mental health, where you actually suffer yourself from all that pressure. And even though you are working very hard, and many postdocs, and I have done that myself during my first postdoc episode at the Helmholtz Center, that for some of the experiments it was necessary to work 12 to 18 to 20 hours, and then you went home for a short sleep, and at 6:30 in the morning you had to return because someone else needed to use the machine that you had been running overnight. And so this is really, for some, a very tough situation concerning the working hours. And as you might remember in my introduction, I'm also a mother. And this didn't make things easier.
True. So I always have a huge respect for all the people who already are doing postdoc but already have a family at home. So right now I don't have anything like that, so I can only, empathize in such a way that I would say, okay, I understand it, but to really go through that and be like, I have a little kid at home actually, and I have to do like 20-hour experiment. Unfortunately, some experiments do need so much time. It's not possible. So, of course, one can blame the experimentist. Like, why are you choosing this kind of experiment? But sometimes it's really not, because you have such a model that requires a lot of growth time or whatever. It's not that easy to have a 9-to-5 job. It's not like that.
Yeah, and it's independent of whether you work with a living organism or cell culture, or you are doing really biochemistry, because sometimes these reactions have a certain time that it takes, and then you need to do the next step, otherwise your whole experiment is spoiled, right? So yes, of course, that is right, that some experiments kind of like ask for that, and it's impossible to do them in a different way, or to decide, well, now it's Friday, I'm going home and I'm continuing on Monday, even though there is situations in the history where these kind of things just leave everything as it is and go on vacation and then return, and then your experiment is done. So there is these stories, but I think that's quite rare.
So we already touched now on one aspect, that work-life balance is more like work, not balance. So what kind of other problems would you say does a postdoc nowadays have to face in academia specifically? We cannot speak for industry, so we are only speaking for academia right now.
Mm-hmm. I think a very important issue is the salary that we receive as postdocs, especially if you think of the junior postdocs, like the situation you have. When I just recapitulate my first postdoc, because I did my PhD in Thuringia. So that was for a university in Thuringia. And then I transferred to Munich, to Bavaria, which is a different state and different laws. And when I started to work at Helmholtz, I was treated like an absolute beginner in science, and that could be seen in my salary. So for those of the listeners who are familiar with what's in German called öffentlicher Dienst, there is clear regulations which salary group you're supposed to be in. So if you're a beginner in science and research, you are grouped into E13, and I was grouped into E13 level 1, which is barely enough to survive in a bigger city like Munich, and Munich is not the only expensive city. So we are actually facing a situation that we studied for at least 5 years, most of us. We continued with a PhD, which is usually around 3 to 4 years, for half a salary or a little bit more than half a salary. Most of the students get now 65% of a position. And then you consider yourself to be a full grown-up researcher, and you get a salary of a beginner. This is in concern of the respect, really a little bit disappointing. And yes, even though we are researchers, we also have a private life. We have an apartment to pay for, and we would like to buy food. And I think for many of us, this is a really difficult situation, and I know that this is the same situation in many countries, so that's not only the case in Germany.
Maybe we just explain to the listeners who are not familiar with the German system. So we have 16 federal states. All of them have their own salary of the public service, you could say. And then in your case, the Helmholtz Center is actually paid by the government in total. So you have to imagine that there's always this distinguishing between federal state and then the government actually, and even then you don't get the money that you deserve. So just some time ago we were talking about what would happen if we would be in industry, and maybe someone who is working in the industry could leave a comment down. So we were expecting, so in my case, since I just started, I would maybe say 60,000 euros, maybe a bit more. But such a valuable resource, actually, I would think you would get like at least 100,000 euros.
I'm quite far away from that.
So you have to imagine that we are conducting science, we are doing the administrative stuff. We have to always come up with new ideas. We have to teach our little master students, bachelor students, and medical students. And we also have to, sometimes people have to go for grant monies, right? So if you need a new machine, or in general you want to do a new topic, work on a new topic, you have to write grants with the PI together. These are all the tasks that we have to impersonate and do equally good, and you get paid in this rubbish sense.
Yes, we do enjoy all we do, right? But we would appreciate to also get a little bit more back in case of the monetary part, right?
At least I would love to, that since it's the federal state and the government, they should give us the appreciation for what we are doing, because without us, the system wouldn't work. So a PI cannot, so a principal investigator or professor cannot do his research because he is never or nearly never in the lab. So he will never be sitting there doing some pipetting and getting some results. So we are doing it for him. And not getting recognized and respected for that is something that really is not okay, I would say.
Yeah, and it's not a problem only in Germany. Maybe that's, again, important
to say. Yes, I agree. So I heard horrible stuff in America, in England, and South America, Asia. So it's not really, I think it's a common problem in academia itself.
Yeah.
So what would be another problem that would come into your mind when a postdoc comes in?
I think one of the biggest things that kept me thinking, and still does once in a while, is whether to stay or not in academia. So to really make that decision was really horrible for me, because I think it's getting a little better how people think about that when you leave academia. But I mean, it's almost 20 years ago when I had to decide whether I want to stay in academia for a postdoc, for my first postdoc, and then 13 years ago I decided for the second. Because at that time, what was said about people leaving academia was, well, they're going off for industry because they just didn't make it. They were not made for science, for doing real research. So you felt like a loser if you left academia.
And there, it's like a mantra. It's a stigma that is staying and making also all the people that are working in industry like really bad, which is not okay. So
no, I mean, I have many friends who did make the decision and left academia, and they are very happy with their job in industry. And it's not as bad as they were telling us when I was at least in this younger postdoc age. So they are enjoying it very much. And that's why I'm still sometimes thinking, well, I should just go, but I know I would miss a lot of what I'm doing here, right? So I would definitely miss the students and teaching the students.
I would miss you a lot.
Thank you.
No, it's also really important that a senior postdoc stays so he can or she can teach the junior postdoc. So if there are problems coming up, or you're unsure of what you want to do later on in research and what kind of topic you want to go, it's really valuable to have someone who actually has a lot of experience. And if you would lose all these people, how can you continue academia in a good sense, right? So you need someone to teach you something. It's not like you cannot come up always by reinventing the wheel. It's not possible.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think that academia loses a lot when they, or at the point where they don't try to at least keep a couple of the postdocs and let them be senior postdocs, to continue and keep all the knowledge this has accumulated in the lab, keep that with the postdoc to be able to pass it on. I have seen it so many times that all of a sudden, can you just do that and that experiment? So-and-so has done that before, but unfortunately the person is not in the lab anymore. Maybe you can contact her. I think she's now there and there. And it's usually difficult to get a hold of them. And then you start all over. And all this knowledge that had been gained, of course, things are fixed in a publication. But the very small little details, what's between the lines, is usually not in the publication. And yes, this is lost by everyone dropping out of the lab. And this is very sad. But maybe I should add something again when you were asking me about this, what's the pitfalls of a postdoc life. What I always felt is that one is kind of left alone with that decision, whether to stay in academia or not. So university is offering very little support in guiding you and helping you to make this decision, right?
Yeah, for me, definitely. So I actually started now to realize what it means to be in academia, so what you have to do. And no one told me in my master's or in my PhD time that there is actually a second or third or fourth way out, so where you can conduct science, but it's a bit different. I come from a background, I was on a so-called Hochschule, so I did not study at the LMU, for instance. I did it at the Hochschule Fresenius, for instance. So I paid money to have my bachelor's and master's. And they were heavily leaning into industry, of course, because they have industry partners. But I never got the hang of it, why they are doing it. And when I was talking to some of the profs, they were like, yeah, academia is not that shiny as they always say. And then I was like, yeah, well, I would like to do research, no? And then I decided to go my own route, and then I applied and got all the, the positions where I am now. But now I realize what they meant. And also now, as a postdoc, I'm actually trying to find courses, seminars, or even like events where I could see what industry has to offer. But it's so difficult because academia doesn't want that. So I heard often enough that academia wants to keep us in their bubble, and the bubble is also not really clear. So you have this kind of milky...
I agree.
Right? And that I think we should communicate to also the people who are maybe right now are bachelor's and master students, or even PhDs right now. It's completely okay to say, I don't want to go to academia, I just do what I want, and then I go to industry, for instance, or any other job, or it's completely fine. You don't owe anyone anything. It's your career, it's your life, and it's your choice.
Yes, and no one is a loser when you're leaving academia. It's absolutely, I hope that this is...
I hope that the stigma somehow stops. And like what I really like is, for instance, what Christian Tidona does. He built this called BioMedX Institute, where he is actually combining academia and industry. So you can have research for a limited of time. And then these guys will help you to figure out if you want to stay in academia or if you want to go in industry. And they will help you to tailor your application and everything. But you did research with a purpose, I would say. Of course, pharma companies are interested in it and they're putting a lot of money in there, but they also have a lot of partner institutions. And these kind of concepts are coming now up because we cannot remain in our bubbles. We need to meet each other, we need to exchange. And this is something that is not given in the full academia setting because they don't want that. Sometimes I have the feeling they would like to portray themselves, we are the only ones conducting real science.
Yes, sometimes one gets the impression. I agree.
So to a certain degree, we should stop thinking that we are non plus ultra, I would say, and start thinking of how can we advance the research with collaborations, because not every pharma industry or company is interested in selling a product in that sense. They want to have something that later on, of course, is sellable, but their primary goal, of course, is also to find a cure or to find a therapy or something like that. And to portray them as, no, they just want to make a pill that you have to take, is, for me, a very outdated vision. You agree?
I absolutely agree.
Okay. So, yeah, because, the problem is that when you start comparing academia with industry, you come up with stigmas and
absolutely
prejudice and whatever. And I don't see that anymore because I would like, so life is too short to be on one route that is already given, right? You would like to explore maybe the right one or the left one. You might want to pave your own way.
And to claim that there's only one route that's the right one, because that's not the truth.
Yeah. So if we come back, what academia is actually setting up for the postdocs is every postdoc in the end should become a professor.
Which is impossible because we are too many for too few positions for professors.
Yes. So there's a really great article from Professor Diernagel, who is at the Charité of Berlin, and you met him, I guess?
Yes, I have met him since I'm a neuroscientist, and he's working in the neuroscience field and also in stroke. So I have met him. He's a very interesting personality and a professor I'm looking up to.
So I really liked his article. It was published in EMBO. I will leave the link down. It's publicly available, so you don't need to download, pay access for it. So it's this initiative called Ich bin Hanna. So maybe if you would like to give a clear or a very short introduction to what is actually Ich bin Hanna and how did it originated, so that the people know what's about.
Well, if I recall right, that this is one of the first initiatives where actually young people in science, so postdocs, started to make people aware of their situation, right? Where they were showing that we are very important people. We are the ones behind the scenes, so to speak, that are in the lab, and we are not always treated the way we would like to be treated, or everyone actually would like to be treated.
So in his article, he just covered how it actually came. So back then, the Ministry of Education and Science published 2021 a video of a fictional character called Hannah. She's a postdoc, and they were actually trying to say that permanent positions are bad, so postdocs should claim themselves to be a professor later on, so they should get all the qualifications required. And the academic system already was at a downfall back then, So it's not like a situation that just came up. It's many, many years, a decade, I guess, at least. And it fueled so much anger in all the people that were in STEM field and in general postdocs and also like PhD students that they really made a shitstorm on Twitter and be like, that's not true. That's really like the worst thing that you can do with a postdoc. And also like it was in an elementary school style written video, which is feels really off for someone who claims to be the government website of, you know. And then what he said is a postdoc, so the stigma that stays around is if you have people in permanent positions, they will clog the system and there will be no innovation. If this would be true, the industry would not survive. So they wouldn't thrive, they wouldn't have new findings or new innovative techniques also. So I don't know who was doing this video, but what kind of so when you hear that, what goes through your mind, and what would you say to the people who made the video?
Well, I have been very often in discussions where it was about to decide whether someone should get a permanent position or not. And I very often heard the word, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe then she or he is not continuing working that hard anymore. Maybe they then don't do anything anymore. I'm serious.
I know.
So maybe some people think I'm making this up, but no, I'm not. So there is actually people in academia that believe, and most of them are on permanent positions, just to...
Professors.
Some of them. They are actually really claiming that as soon as you have a permanent position, you stop working. Well, I don't think that is the case, right? It's just making life a little more stable. Because one of the things about being a postdoc is that very often it's expected that after finishing your project, you're going off to somewhere else. And very rarely you find a position that interests you and where people think you're suitable for that position in the same city. So that means you have to move again. So who of us is really keen of doing that for the rest of your life? So most of us would like to have some work-life balance with a balance and maybe have a family. And all of that is more difficult if you're traveling around for the rest of your life, or at least for the time where you decide to stay in academia and you don't have a professorship. And even then, not all the professorships are permanent positions anymore. So I absolutely do not agree. I don't think that someone who decided to work in research and or academia, so also research in a company, would stop working when you get a permanent position, because that's why we decided on going into research, because we are eager to know, eager to find out, and we are curious. We want to work. We don't want to just sit there.
So I would like to cite one of his statements. So permanent positions reduce the pressure on scientists and thus are bulwark against questionable scientific practices. So he also mentioned that when you're on non-permanent positions, that postdocs or PhDs start to, or also principal investigators start to conduct science in a very different way, and as you mentioned already, start to fake results or make up results.
In the worst case, yes.
In the worst case, and reproducibility is also something that has to be given, which is also not possible if you're conducting science in this way, because you need, or you have that pressure and cannot actually sit back and do it properly. So sometimes in a very competitive field, you need to publish 3 to 6 papers within 3 years, which is like kind of an insane amount. And how many results do you have to publish in one paper? So it's not enough that, or sometimes it is, but usually if you want to publish in a higher journal, which is in our case Science, Nature and Cell, or everything below is already like not well seen, but it's I don't know, it's really difficult to have like all the time novel things. It's not possible, right? Novel things maybe happen if you collaborate with someone who's from another field, but as if you establish a group, it's not like that you always have a novel idea that will lead you to science or something. And then to put the pressure on the postdocs and also on the PhDs to publish the results that you want. As you said, you have a certain hypothesis and it doesn't turn out, but you have to fake the data in such a way or trim it in such a way that it goes in that direction, is actually fueling it if you don't make the permanent positions. And something that in my mind comes is also not every postdoc wants to be a professor. So like you, was this something that you came up, yes, I want to become a professor later on?
Well, I have thought about this, and I think this would be something I could do as well, but on my way, it just I didn't have the opportunity, let's say, because I decided on having a more balanced life and having time for my family, and I think I would have had to work even harder than what I have already done, and I would have had to have a little more luck and maybe a lot more luck. I don't know, it's difficult to say, but it wasn't the only goal, right?
No, for me as well. So when I date back the first time, I was like, oh, I want to be a group leader and do my science. But back then I didn't know what the real situation was, because I was like, if you're a group leader, you have a permanent position, which is complete out of the box. It's not true.
Yeah.
And then also the problem of applying for money all the time. So it's not like that if you get grant money for, I don't know, 3 years or something like that, that it's done. You get a lot, so you can do. No, you have to apply for another grant, and this vicious cycle goes on, and it never stops.
Yes.
That's the main problem, and
Yes. It's like a hamster in a wheel.
Completely. And if you agree to do it, fine, do it. It's your life, your choice. But I realized I don't want to be part of this wheel. So we as academics somehow owe the younger generation to tell them that this unfortunately exists, and you have to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. If you start and say, okay, I'm eager, I'm really motivated to do it, no one will stop you. But in my case, I was really motivated as well, but it crunched me to a point right now where I'm like, is it really worth doing it?
Mm-hmm. And you know what also kept me in the track of being a postdoc is that I really enjoy myself to work at the bench, and I have not seen many of the professors at the bench anymore. So if you are a professor, it's very unlikely that you still have time to spend in the lab where you really do experiments yourself. And that would be something I would miss so much. So that's why I'm actually very happy in that position with all the different tasks that I have, because I don't really think I miss being professor.
For me as well. So when I look at all the professors, they sit in their offices, they need to do administrative stuff, they need to teach. but it's not really that they come and do some experiments anymore. So that I would say this wonderful picture in the movies, like an 80-year-old emeritus professor sitting at the bench and doing something, it does not exist. So
Maybe when they're that age, they do have time again to be at the bench, but
who knows? Yeah.
yes, very,
But
very often.
I agree. So I think it's not like that. So they are happy that the time is over, maybe. So and for qualifying as a professor, one thing that also stood out to me in this article from Professor Dirnagel, that he said some are very lucky already to have in the PhD such a good project that they can publish a first author paper. So for the people out there who are not in science, it is not enough if your name is on the paper. The order counts. So if your name comes first, or if you're a group leader, if your name comes as last. So usually the first 2 to 3 positions in the name field are the most important ones because they seem to be the one who did all the work in the article.
At least most.
Or most. And all the people that are somehow mentioned in between are like, they helped somehow, even though it's a joint effort, right? Technicians sometimes are completely cut out, even though they do a lot, like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Some profs are actually nice and put their technicians on top, but some of them, they just see the technician as, you have to do the media, that's it.
They're sometimes only part of the lab, and they do very important work. I definitely would like to point that out. I'm very happy to be able to work with the technicians in our lab. They are very eager people, and they are hardworking, and many of them have a lot of experience. So the younger ones out there that work in science, if you have a problem, you might also ask your technicians, because they are really clever and really cool and a lot of years of experience.
If you have one.
If you have one.
Yeah. So in the beginning, group leaders, so when you start your lab, sometimes they lack a technical assistant. But I agree completely. When I was left alone in the lab in my PhD time, I started, so I never had this kind of, like making someone down, but in the academic world, you're actually not appreciating enough the technician in that sense.
Yeah.
And when I was completely alone and she was not there anymore, and I had to start from scratch, of course I had like the book to read up all the recipes, but you have to imagine that a technician sets you up for your actual experiments. So you, of course, think of how to design the experiments, but all the ingredients that you need to perform it, actually a technician provides you. And this is something that I learned, and that's why I appreciate it even more, because I learned what it means, right? So this is also something that in academia is also going wrong. And coming back to the postdocs, in my last episode, I was talking to a PhD student, Leona, and we were also talking about postdocs, and I said postdocs are the backbone, actually, of the lab.
Plus the technicians, I would say.
Plus the technicians. So when you, in your PhD time, were lucky to be in a lab that had enough in the money and so on, you get your first author paper and everything, then you might in the postdoc also be lucky enough to be there at the right time. Then this is somehow considered to be you are a rising star.
I know.
But someone like me, because in your case you got, I think, 2 first author papers in your PhD.
I even had 3. I mean, they
3.
were not in Science, Nature,
but
or
you
Cell.
have. But you have.
Yes, I did get the support to be able to write 3 publications. Yes.
Yeah. So in my case, my PI left me I was completely alone. I tried to get all the data together and write my thesis. I don't have any publication in that sense, and it's really difficult for me. But I'm passionate and I have a lot of ideas, and people are like, boy, that sounds cool, we're gonna do that. And, getting now a bit of the recognition that I was lacking back then. But to have this make or break point, this is a rising star because it already had a publication and the other one is like nothing, is something that he also pointed out, that we should stop looking for the people like that. So another important issue is the overall matrices that we have. So how many publications do you have, how many authorships, first authorships you have, the so-called H index. It does not really say a lot about you and your research.
No, it says a lot about things that happened around you and maybe situations that brought you a lot of luck. Only to have publications in a high impact journal usually means that you were lucky enough to get a position in a lab that has a lot of money, a lot of expertise already, and a name, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, if you're a big guy or big woman in the field or not. All the small ones are not that important, which is in my case, in my view, completely untrue. So everyone, as you said, does their contribution to science, and everyone who does it has their right to be there. Only because you pinpoint to one person that somehow has 1 or 2 science papers more doesn't mean that he or she is better than anyone.
Yeah.
In the end, we are all, in German you say, mit Wasser kochen, right? So we cook all with water. It's not magic what we are doing. So what I wanted to say.
Maybe we should finish with something positive.
Yes. So maybe we just wrap up and say what actually a postdoc is, and like a little summary. And in the next episode, we actually go on what is positive about, or what is gonna changing right now.
Yeah, where are we going? Where do we hope to go?
Yes.
Okay, so we said that a postdoc is someone doing research in a lab, really working at a bench, doing wet lab work, at least in the STEM field.
Yes. Maybe also data analysis, some people, like bioinformaticians and so on.
Nowadays, it's also very, many of us do data analysis, so we do spend time in an office and at the computer, so that's also part of being a scientist. We do teach students, either in theoretical lectures, or the students, like the master students or the doctoral students, who start their own lab work. So we teach them. With the work we are doing, be it at the bench or at the computer, we are all contributing our part to research, and most of us hope to be able to contribute to some kind of treatment, or at least understanding why things go wrong in our body or in our world.
True. And then we touched upon what a postdoc has to do. So the task, doing research, being at the bench, and applying for grants and so on. But we also touched the problems that they have to go through. So one problem is the immense pressure that you have, because you're under a permanent position. It's called the postdoc limbo, that you always have a new permanent position, but it's not
And you're time limited.
You get really badly paid, actually, for that, what you're bringing on the table.
Yeah, in most countries of the world, yes.
Yeah. The pressure that you feel is influencing the science that we conduct, because people start to fake their data or have the urge to manipulate their data in such a way that the hypothesis is okay. You have the problem of publishing, because you're only a good researcher when you publish in really high impact journals. And if you leave academia because you want to have a work-life balance, which is not given as a postdoc in academia, the stigma stays around that you are a loser.
Yes.
Any other point?
No, I think we both covered it.
Okay. So in the next episode with Corinna, we want to have a more positive vibe to it. So we covered everything that is negative, but now we're going to talk about the positive aspect. So would love to see you and tune in. And we're going to see us and leave a comment. Maybe if you agree, we can do a Q&A if someone is interested. So leave questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe. And we see us in the next episode, right?
Yes.